Hello. This is a story about a girl who everyone thinks looks really... No.
I don't even remember how it goes, despite having listened to it like 5 times in a row before this. I don't remember the whole bit.
Yet another incomprehensible bit in classic style.
This is the story about a pugnant who looks a little scrawny, but really he's got a dirty mind.
He's like strong, he's got dirty mind.
He's just a pervert. That's it.
That's the pervert.
Yeah, that's a supreme title.
Welcome to the sex supremacy.
Jesus.
That's the TikTok edit for Zez.
Just playing funk really loud, yeah.
It's going to be so fucking sad, because I know a lot of people are going to be so sad about the new JJK season when Hikari does not have funk.
The funk music.
Because he's not going to have it. It's not going to happen.
But what if he does? How crazy would it be?
But it's explicit. It's a very important thing in the manga that the song that's played is from his shitty fucking romance anime he likes.
I know.
It's a major aspect.
Sigh. Alright. Shall we continue?
Yes.
Two gods clashed in the skies above Azum, a god of flesh and a god of light. Hollywood clung to the rubble around him as he watched the battle from far below. Each impact between the two forces, between the two humanoid stars, was creating enough air pressure to make a hurricane blush. It was a wonder that Hollywood hadn't been blown away already. Aether, he marveled as golden flames collided with crimson again and again and again. You need Aether to even survive watching this. The instant after Azez had declared his supremacy, he'd launched himself at the strongest gene tyrant, as if that intolerable heat wasn't even a concern anymore. Perhaps it really wasn't. Looking at Azez now, his hair shining white and his eyes points of light, it was hard to imagine him as a victim of something as petty as heat. Before, Azez's flight had been a violent thing, launching himself with his flames like a bullet through the air. Now he was a fish in water, like he'd been flying all his life. Hollywood, who'd been born with wings, couldn't even imagine matching such dexterity. Even if he could, his wings had burned away. His skin, too, was covered in the marks of Aetheral presence. It was all he could do to keep kneeling. The time for those as small as him to make a difference had come to an end. So all he could do was look up, and watch, and pray. Win, Hollywood begged the star named Azez. Win! Aetheral Space, 0.12. Mark of the Beast, Part 3. Swords of Stillness! Zarakel screamed, wings pointed behind him like daggers as he dived towards his foe. In the moment before he reached Victoria, he plunged his hands into his abyssal aether and pulled out 2 pitch-black short swords. Grinning wildly, he slashed at Victoria's top 2 arms, weapons leaving a dark trail in the air behind him. A cross of the void painted over the world. Zarakel's ability, despite what most believed, was not to produce the tyrant-slaying spears of stillness. It was to imbue whatever weapons he had stored in his aether with stillness. While he preferred fighting with a spear, there was nothing stopping him from using any other weapons he'd managed to swallow up between the sparks of black. Hence the Swords of Stillness. Hence the surprise on Victoria's face. Hence the delight on his own. Zarakel had chosen his timing well. Victoria had prepared to part her flesh again in preparation for the spear, but the sudden appearance of these swords, and the new angle of attack they came with, threw her off entirely. 2 of Victoria's arms, still clutching greatswords, went flying off through the air as they were cleanly severed by Zarakel's blades. The blind man wasn't done, though. Stillness only applied as long as the weapons were still in contact with the target's body. A slash was momentary. The moment the blade cleared, Victoria would just be able to regenerate her lost body parts. Zarakel took action to prevent that. His wings flapped once, launching him down towards the ground just in time to avoid Victoria's counter. Sliding between her legs, Zarakel took one of his Swords of Stillness and thrust it right into the small of her back, positioning it to be as difficult to remove with her current body configuration as possible. Locked into shape, Victoria snarled, whirling around and slashing at Zarakel with her 2 remaining arms. Sparks flew as he deflected the slashes with lightning-fast strikes of his remaining blade, before his feathered wings propelled him up into the air once more. Shurikens of Stillness! He roared, hurling a handful of black throwing stars down towards Victoria. Most gene tyrants, Zarakel had found, didn't quite appreciate just how much they abused their ability to shapeshift. Arrogant bitches like Victoria always thought it was nothing but a minor handicap when they got hit by stillness. The form they'd assumed was still perfect for combat, they thought. They just had to be a little more careful, they thought. Oh, they just didn't get it. A gene tyrant barely ever even moved without changing their shape at least a little. When they swung a limb, they would subconsciously optimize that limb for that movement. When they went to look at something, they would subconsciously adjust their eyes for maximum visual acuity. They did it so much they didn't even realize they were doing it anymore. So, when what had become second nature was suddenly sealed off, even a seasoned warrior like Victoria couldn't help but falter. 5 of the shurikens of stillness made their way through Victoria's defense, striking the joints between her armored shell and sinking deep into the flesh there. Compared to Zarakal's other weapons, the shurikens were more of an annoyance than anything else. They could be removed far more easily than the sword buried in Victoria's back right now, but the mental stress was another story. Right now, Victoria was painfully aware that the tide of the fight was about to shift against her. She was hardly the first gene tyrant that Zarakal had gone up against. She'd studied his fights. She knew how he operated. From where she was standing, she could see the death from 1,000 cuts that awaited her. That fact, combined with the blades now piercing her body from multiple angles, produced more hesitation. And hesitation was nothing but an opening. "Stave of stillness!" Zarakal cackled, diving back down. Black aether coalesced in his waiting hand, becoming a spiked mace that he raised high above his head, grin spread wide for the crushing blow. Victoria readied both of her remaining swords. Her own mouth tightened into a grimace as she struck fast. "That's not what a stave is!" she screamed furiously. I was thinking the same thing. The 3 weapons clashed with an almighty gong, but without shape-shifting to bolster it, raw bone could only do so much against steel emboldened by aether. The gong became a crack, and a second later, both of Victoria's remaining greatswords shattered into pieces. The stave of stillness continued downwards, colliding with Victoria's skull and smashing it to smithereens. Zarakal giggled, swerving to the side, and back out of Victoria's range as he did so. He was more like a fly than a raven, darting in and out to attack over and over again. Even more than the damage to her flesh, the damage to Victoria's ego must have been immense. She was being slowly disassembled by something that should have been unfathomably beneath her. Her remaining hands were clenched tight like claws as blood and brain matter spilled out of the stump of her neck. "Enough," she gurgled, using a mouth that hadn't been destroyed yet. "Enough of this." "Nah," Zarakal grinned. "I'm still having fun." The scream came from deep within Victoria's chest. "Attendants!" "Eh?" Zarakal scowled as his wings kept him aloft. Then they came. They must have been waiting in the wings for Victoria's command. Small figures, clad in robes and masks, scurrying out of the darkness and alleys to join the gene tyrant at her side. Zarakal summoned a sword of stillness to start slicing his way through the mass. But he hesitated. The sizes of those bodies? They couldn't be anything but kids. Zarakal clicked his tongue. 4 of the attendants were carrying a massive sword between them, and Victoria took it with her 2 remaining hands. That wasn't all her attendants had brought her, though. No. They'd come to give her a magic bullet of her own. They planted their hands against her body, and sparks like electricity began to flow over Victoria's form. Aether. Just like how the Zaylan Morhan enhanced the Fool with aether to power it up, these children were using aether to bolster the strength of their mistress. "Aether, huh?" Zarakal sneered as he watched from above. "You damn hypocrite!" "It matters not," Victoria seethed, rising up to her full height. Her attendants were dutifully pulling the stillness-imbued weapons out of her body, but she surely already knew that Zarakal wouldn't just watch that happen. She would begin her attack right here and now, and even from his position, Zarakal could tell it was going to be a hell of a blow. Sparks of many colors ran across her body, her arms, the sword she held high in the air, ready to swing. The monstrous raw strength of a gene tyrant, combined with the monstrous enhancement of aether. This was less an attack and more an event. Huh, Zarakal thought vaguely. I might actually die here. Shield of stillness. He doubted the black buckler that manifested around his arm would do much to withstand this, but it couldn't hurt, right? Fine, he growled. Do your... Victoria did her worst. She had no intention of listening to the last words of Vermin. Before Zarakal could even finish his sentence, the Chitinite swung her divine blade, and sliced the clouds above in twain. Azez's fist crashed into Otrara's chest, and this time his hand remained unbroken. The pinnacle of physical strength went flying through the sky from the impact, but quickly righted himself with massive wings that burst from his back. The wings existed only for a moment, though, replaced by thrusters of burning gas to rocket Aetheral right back towards his opponent. Azez readied himself in midair, clenching his fist. He knew that the strength he had acquired was not overwhelming. Against anyone else, maybe, but not Aetheral. This was still a battle that he stood a good chance of losing. From here on in, this was a fight of wit and skill. Aetheral had had millennia to sharpen those things. Could Azez really measure up? Of course. Of course he could. He'd said so himself, hadn't he? From here on in, I am supreme. From here on in, he wasn't allowed to lose anymore. Azez Tazir swung the hand of heaven. Supreme shine! A beam of unimaginable heat poured forth from Azez's fist, surging through the sky towards the incoming Aetheral. His noble singularity didn't even attempt to dodge. The pride of the ultimate warrior wouldn't allow that. Instead, the god that was like a man simply braced himself, transmuting his skin into a substance like black crystal. The beam was reflected and became many beams, a spiderweb of light that shredded the city below. Azez didn't even look. He couldn't afford to look. In a battle like this, the second in which you did not act was the second in which you died. Instead, he took advantage of the momentary smokescreen, darting in as a ribbon of golden light and smashing his fist directly into Aethereal's face. This form of his was designed to deal with heat, not blunt force. Shards of black crystal flew in every direction as Aethereal's head snapped back. Still, the god grinned. This was what he'd been waiting thousands of years for, after all. A battle with his life on the line, against a foe truly capable of defeating him. He didn't even bother lifting his head back up. He allowed it to bubble back into his back and sprouted a brand new replacement from the stump. Still grinning, he raised his hands in the ready stance of some long-lost martial art. It was the closest of close quarters. Aetheral unleashed the technique he'd been honing for millennia, Azez countered it with the desperation of a madman. Fist struck fist, leg struck leg, skull struck skull. Each impact, each blow, each block, each and every one of them was a disaster in its own right. Buildings were sprayed apart into rubble by the backlash. The clouds swirled in a spiral above them, heavy and tense with rain and lightning. With each purple flash, a new silhouette of T2 could be seen, still locked in combat, a new legend to be spoken of for the next 1,000 years. This was not the end of their battle. This battle between gods would continue for hours yet, until 3 days very nearly became 4. But if this story were to go into full detail about that fight, about every decision made, every moment of crisis, every apotheosis of violence, it would never end. So, the end of their fight began like this. Azez swung his fist and struck Aetheral once again, right in the chest. He'd landed blows like this so many times now he'd lost count. He'd even forgotten how many times he'd thought he'd landed the finishing blow. But this time, it was just the tiniest bit difference. Perhaps Aethereal's exhausted mind had neglected the proper formation of his muscle armor. Perhaps Azez's preceding blow had left just a tiny bit more damage than before. Perhaps the angle was just slightly different, or the thrust slightly faster. Whatever the case, it happened. The tiniest gap opened up in that impenetrable armor. Azez did not miss the only chance he'd ever get. Allowing Aethereal's fist to just barely scrape by his face, flaying the skin away, he darted into his enemy's range. One hand seized tight hold of Aethereal's shoulder, fingers digging into bloody muscle. The other hand was raised high, curled into a fist, turned into a gavel of the revolution. He took a single breath, and then began. Supreme shine! The first hit sent Aetheral down towards the ground, a bloody comet falling to the earth. Azez followed without hesitation, kicking off of thin air to launch himself, an aurora of golden flames pushing him forth. Aethereal's impact kicked up a mountain of smoke, but that would not last long. Azez would not allow it to. Supreme shine! The second hit cleared away all the smoke for miles around, all the clouds for miles around, all the roads for miles around, all the streets for miles around, all the buildings for miles around. In the kingdom that Azez's fist created, nothing was allowed to exist save a pristine glass crater. And then, supreme shine! The strongest man in human history threw the strongest punch in human history. Muscles shattered, bones crumpled, organs ruptured. For a moment, time seemed frozen. Azez within the golden aurora, and the moment after his fist made contact, eyes still wide and mouth still open, a silent scream still pouring from his throat. Aetheral was a shattered statue, body parts flying in every direction, his eyes still surprised even as they flew out of their sockets. Blood hung in the air like rain. And then the light erupted. The flames produced were beyond anything anyone in Azum had seen before. The darkest night became the brightest day, as supreme shine devoured the horizon, as if the entire world had suddenly been plunged into the desert. All across the planet, the furious fighting that had been ongoing for days stopped for a single moment, as every single head turned to look at history. And with that strike, nothing remained of the gene tyrant Aetheral. Nothing, save for the tiniest scrap of flesh. It had very nearly been destroyed. It was charred, it was ragged, it was very nearly invisible to the eye. This scrap of flesh, 2 centimeters by 1 centimeter, should not have been able to sustain the consciousness of a gene tyrant. The path to the revelation of 9 by 9 had been a bloody one, but the Zaylan Morhan had confirmed the minimum size before a gene tyrant's flesh could no longer retain their mind many times during this campaign. And yet, a tiny mouth opened on that tiny lump of meat. Not yet. Perhaps there were secrets that only the Origin strain were privy to. Perhaps there were blessings that Eve only granted to its most favored. Perhaps this was some automatic function that the gene tyrant in question had programmed ahead of time. Perhaps the will of Aetheral, the peak of physical strength, could never have been restrained by such a flimsy rule in the first place. Perhaps it was just built differently. Whatever the case, the scrap of flesh whispered those words as it slowly fell past Azez's face. Then it happened. White needles, thinner than thin for maximum efficiency, lunged out from the scrap of flesh. The target was not Azez. In this posthumous second, they would have stood no chance of scratching Azez, let alone killing him. No, their targets were many, and their targets were myriad. A fly buzzing through the air, moss growing between cracks in stone, a severed hand flung from the battle, dried blood encrusting the floor, dead skin lingering in dust. There was so much biomass in this world, and the needles eagerly took advantage of every stray cell. When they connected, when they pierced, new white needles would sprout from what they'd connected with to hunt even more biomass. Again and again, over and over, lightning fast, thought fast, within the span of 1.7 seconds, a pale tree of might had grown throughout the entire district. Azez had just finished blinking when the needles pulled their bounty in. Detritus hardened into bone. New flesh wriggled around the framework like so many worms. Eyeballs bubbled into sockets, locking onto Azez's face, and the half-finished being raised one fist high, shining with almighty body imaging. Die! The explosion that followed the punch was nothing compared to what Azez had unleashed, but in that moment of vulnerability, it was enough. So, Victoria said, voice low. It's true, then. The slash she'd unleashed had certainly sliced the clouds above in half, but it had not done the same to Zarek el-Barras. He was just flying there, intact, his face pale as he understood just how close his own death had been. He hadn't done anything to stop Victoria. He wasn't the reason her arms and her sword had stopped mid-swing. The reason for that was behind the chitinite. Marguerite the Tenderheart had assumed an octopoid form, 8 strong tentacles wrapped around Victoria's limbs to bind them tight. Unlike the other gene tyrants, she wasn't enjoying the benefits of Aether, but her raw strength and the surprise of her appearance had still served to stop Victoria in her tracks. Victoria's attendants backed away, hands grasping at air, masked faces looking from one tyrant to the other uncertainly. They'd almost succeeded in removing all the stillness weapons from Victoria's body. Should they continue? They didn't know. In this situation, to assist one tyrant would mean going against another. Even if one was clearly a traitor, that wasn't a distinction they were equipped to make. It's over, Victoria, Marguerite said, her voice echoing through the street from her bulbous brain sac. Accept it with grace. Victoria growled and, swinging around, sliced off all 8 of Marguerite's tentacles before one could even blink. She pointed her blade at the other gene tyrant with one hand, and with the other she plucked the final shuriken of stillness from her form. The effects were immediate. The stumps of her missing arms shifted, becoming additional muscle for her remaining ones. Her head became cylindrical, covered in staring red eyes with which to keep watch over both Zarakel and Marguerite. She even sprouted a mighty set of feathered wings with which to pursue the blind man if he tried escaping to the skies again. Even more than this thing, you disgust me, Tenderheart, Victoria sniffed. It killed Olga. You know that. It probably had a hand in Elizabeth's death, too. Do you understand that? Do you even care? Marguerite's bulk shifted upwards as she assumed a humanoid form, a brown-haired young woman clad in robes of pale snakeskin, antlers curving upwards from her temples. Oh, is she the Hex-K Gene Tyrant?
She's not, no.
Oh, I thought that was hinting at that because Blind Man was in their legend. Our time is over, Victoria, she said quietly. Pathetic, Victoria growled. You can't even offer a rebuttal. Are you capable of talking at all outside of platitudes? I'm not going to argue with you, Victoria. Of course not, because you can't. Do you think you'll fare any better than the rest of us? If these things win, they'll kill you too. The thing behind me would only be too happy to do it right now, I'm sure. Marguerite closed her eyes. I've made my peace with that. Oh, I'm sure you have, traitor. These things might buy this tragic heroin act of yours, but Zarakal took his chance. At the moment Victoria's frustration reached its peak, he lunged in, black wings launching him through the air like a bullet. Inky black weapons appeared in his hands, a spear of stillness in one hand, a sword in the other. Marguerite followed his lead. Her humanoid form became serpentine in an instant, a giant snake rushing down the street like a runaway train. Victoria held her sword in both hands. Stray sparks of aether still clung to her form. She was still the Gene Tyrant most skilled with the sword. It didn't matter that she was outnumbered. It didn't matter that she was facing another Gene Tyrant. This would be a battle for the ages. By the time they were done, Victoria the Chiton Knight had swung her sword 14,813 times. By the time they were done, Marguerite the Tenderheart had sustained 2,912 wounds that would have been fatal for any lesser creature. By the time they were done, Zarakal the Blind Man had pulled 391 weapons out of his dancing black aether. By the time they were done, they were exhausted, they were spent, they were ragged, and they were still fighting. Zarakal's wings had stopped working, so he stood on Marguerite's back as she lunged for their mutual foe. Victoria's sword had cracked, so she wielded it upside down as a blunt club instead. Marguerite's mind, never suited for fighting, had been worn down by the hours of combat. And as the three of them collided in the square one more time, a gargantuan plasma shot smashed into them from above. There was no telling the source of the attack. It could have been one of the Gene Tyrant's bishops, or one of the Zaylan Morhan's mechanicals. Oh, bioships.
No, the previously unmentioned bishops.
The walking church of the Gene Tyrants.
The bishops, damn it, they're even stronger than the origin strain. Those monsters have come out.
The four holy bishops.
It's like pathetic, Catrera.
The queen may move wherever she pleases, but the bishop comes at surprise from an angle. What was I doing again?
Oh, yeah. One of the Gene Tyrants bios.
It could have been aimed directly at them, or it could have been a stray shot that went off course. There was no way to know, and none of them ever found out either. It was the least of their concerns. That shot didn't kill anyone. In fact, quite the opposite. Before that attack struck the Earth, there had been 3 people involved in that fight. Afterwards, there were 4. The edict that Lord Director Eve had enacted against unauthorized reproduction was only a mental block. No Gene Tyrant could turn themselves from one person into 2 without the explicit permission of their ultimate creator. That edict had no authority over the unintentional, however. It was a miracle shot, a blast that split Victoria's suffering body into chunks of nearly equal size. One half remained humanoid, continuing to swing its weapon against Zarakal and Marguerite. The other half writhed for a moment as indiscriminate flesh before pooling together some semblance of a beast-like form. For the briefest of instants, the 2 that had been one locked eyes. And then the original Victoria's scream shattered stone. Go! Find Edgar! Kill Edgar! As the second Victoria galloped away, Zarakal and Marguerite went to pursue, but the original skull had not been diminished. One slash of her sword sent Marguerite's head flying off her body, and a second nearly did the same for Zarakal. The original Victoria raised her sword high. While she was like this, no enemy could break through her defense to pursue her counterpart. And in that moment, Marguerite the Tenderheart decided that the time had come. In this fight between Gene Tyrants, neither one of them had resorted to the ultimate sanction. To do so was nearly unthinkable. Preserving the Gene Tyrant population was a biological imperative for them. They would slash at each other, and they would claw at each other, and they would gnaw at each other, but when it actually came to one tyrant killing another, they would always hesitate. But the time had come. Marguerite let out a shaky breath, and a tendril tipped with a stinger slipped out from beneath her tongue. It waved through the air, pointing between Victoria's eyes like a dagger. The venom of a Gene Tyrant pulsated menacingly within. Victoria regarded it with solemnity. At last, the final betrayal had come. Her eyes flicked between her final opponents, Margarith and Zerakel, and a stinger of her own emerged from her wrist like a hidden blade. "So be it," she said, voice low. "Dance with me, then." Azez gasped as he slowly picked himself up, from within the crater, within the crater, within the crater. He hardly had the time to check his injuries, but he was willing to bet he was a sorry sight. If not for the power granted by his flames, this form of absolute strength he'd acquired, he most likely wouldn't be able to stand right now. Hell, he most likely wouldn't be able to breathe right now. It was a good thing he had that power then. He needed to breathe. He needed to stand. He needed to fight. Make it mean something, Azez. He'd made too many promises to do anything else. "You've impressed me," said Aetheral. Azez braced himself as his enemy began to walk out of the wall of smoke, but the figure that emerged from the smog wasn't what he'd expected. It was Aetheral, without a doubt. The aura of certain death was far too potent for it to be anyone else. But now Aetheral was looking at Azez through his own eyes. What?
Mm-hmm.
I'm confused.
Continue. You'll just cover it.
Is he? But is it saying he's looks like Azez now?
Yeah.
Okay. "I acknowledge you as an equal, Azez Tazir," Aetheral said solemnly, striding across the wasteland. "To honor your prowess, I will assume your form for the next 1,000 years." It was just as Aetheral said. The figure that now walked towards Azez, ready to deal the finishing blow, was himself. A version of himself without injury or imperfection. That which was weak was made strong. That which was crooked was made straight. Azez watched as a better version of himself prepared to kill him. "This next one will kill you," Aetheral said. "Don't worry. I won't let them stick you in the nerve senate like the others." Anger boiled Azez's brain. Aetheral was talking like this was already a done deal. Did he think he was speaking to a corpse? No, it's the other way around. "I already killed you once, bastard." That fighting spirit erupted inside Azez's heart, a need to destroy this enemy once and for all, a need to prove himself stronger, to prove himself supreme, to take all that this monster was and tear it apart. He clenched his fists, and Aetheral grinned. "Yes," he breathed, "that's the way. You truly are invigorating, Azez Tazir." Azez offered no rebuttal. He couldn't spare energy that could be used for fighting on words right now. Instead, he simply kicked off the ground and launched himself towards his enemy. A single attack. That was all he had left in him. Still grinning, Aetheral raised his own fist. He would meet Azez's punch with one of his own, a cross-counter to split the world in half. But the single attack Azez had left was not a simple punch. He had discarded the Lantern of Truth long ago in this fight. As a container for flames, it had served as a limiter for his power. Once he'd conquered that boundary, he'd thought there was no further need for it. But, limiter or not, it was still a container. Screaming out his fury, Azez the Absolute threw his fist forwards. Golden aether crackled. His desperate speed was enough to weave past the weakened Aetheril's final punch, but he didn't have enough strength to punch all the way through his enemy's body. So, his eyes wide and his lips bloody, he punched halfway through his foe, and the broken lantern whipped across the battlefield, piercing through Aetheril's back. Hand and glass met in the middle. A payload of flames oozed into Azez's grip. Aetheral looked down at the hand running him through, eyes widened in mild surprise. "Oh," he said. "Good luck to you, then." Supreme shine. Light exploded within Aetheril's body, flooding out through his eyes and mouth and ears, golden heat visible through his skin. The radiance of the attack didn't even compare to what had illuminated the sky earlier in their battle, but it would suffice. Both of them had been on their last legs. Azez had just managed to trip up his enemy first. By the time the light cleared, Azez was no longer standing amidst rubble. Instead, what had remained of Aetheril's body, irradiated past the point of holding consciousness, had expanded around him, becoming a warped structure of bone the size of a temple. Oh, is this where they put the fucking temple?
No, this is where earlier in the story Morgan and Gregory fought. Gregory and Silver Saint fought here.
Oh, this isn't the temple where Azez's little hologram is?
No. This is the museum was built around this, where Silver Saint and Gregory had their fight.
Oh, that's cool. Azez took 1 step back, 2 steps back, and fell right down. At the last second before his mind ceased to exist, Aetheral had turned his body into a filter for the radiation the final Supreme was producing, so that Azez wouldn't be killed by the backlash of his final attack. That had been the final grace of his noble singularity. Slowly, as he panted on the ground, facing up towards the sky, Azez raised a fist. He had no words, no speech, no message. Instead, a soundless scream poured out of his mouth once more, and victory echoed across old Azum. Is that what Ha means? New?
Well, we
Azum
found
Ha?
out before that the flagship of the Zelen Mohan is called the Ha, so presumably it's related to that.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Oh, wow, that was exhausting.
You beat him. You beat Aetheral.
Just reading their fight was exhausting. It was like, it sounded tiring. It was like the scale hit so high that I'm like, this would just tucker me out.
Would you win? Would you
No,
lose?
I'd be like, you can just kill me. Sure, I'm sleepy. I don't want to do this anymore.
After the first day.
4 days. Yeah. After day 2, I think I'd be like, I'm done.
Yeah, this is unwinnable.
The Gene Tyrants win. Fuck it. I can't do this.
What about when you got to phase like 5?
Yeah. No, honestly, if I had made it the days, the moment he did the whole like reforms thing from the little patch of skin, I would have been like, all right, I'm killing myself.
Cheating.
He'd be like, yes, let's have one mighty fight. And I'd already have like a knife in my belly.
You said that.
Yeah, I'd already have the gun in my mouth.
I've gone through 6 power-ups. You're still fucking...
Fuck this, dude. You can have it.
Aetheral gets A for top 1 inverse.
Jesus Christ. Aetheral versus, what was his name? Ash Talduran, who wins.
Aetheral. Probably.
Damn. Alright, well, we have some Aether questions, don't we?
Yes. Yes, we do.
Let's pop
You
over.
can say that. You can say we've got some questions to be answered. I'm saying it like I'm angry, but I don't know why.
I felt bad because I wanted to give the battle screams more oomph, but like I didn't want to peak the mic and or disturb the neighbors. But
Yeah,
I felt like I could have done more for them. I don't know. All right. Let's see. Where was I last at? Okay.
12.
Lan asks, did Rory know of the Azez clone in the Tomb of the Supreme?
She does. It's not really clone, I would say, though. It's more like Azez GPT down there.
Says GPT. No. Would Helena, Athena, Lux's genre shift continue to apply once entering Gemini Dominion?
It would probably still apply to herself, but not to anything else. So she could, like, help with her own injuries and stuff, but she couldn't apply.
Was genre shift... What was that ability again?
I'm pretty she was pretty radical, but from what I recall of what I wrote, she could change the age rating of the surroundings. So like,
I thought that was as seen on TV or VG or whatever.
No, well, yes, I'm pretty sure she could like make it so like there's absurd amounts of gore from like minor injuries.
Oh yeah, or like make it like slapstick or whatever.
So she could like have it so her own injuries are slapstick, but I don't think she could affect the environment within Gemini Dominion with it.
Lan asks if a climber didn't have hands, could she still use curse hands?
The stumps she could use it for the stumps, yeah.
Clapping is an act of the spirit or whatever.
Yeah. Hating is an act of the spirit.
Lan also asks, Dragon's Breath is considered a state secret. Does the whole UAP leadership know the details, or just Shen Zhirong?
Or just Shen Zhirong knows the details. Everyone else is just like, the extent of the knowledge is usually just like, he's him.
Blair says, wait, a giant multi-eyed bat monster and Umbran hunters? Those were both Camilla's creations. He was on a Zoom. Oh my god, that's so cool. Tan, can my Aetheral question be to confirm that you're actually using my design?
Sure.
You know what the fucked up thing is, and Blair does note this, that I came up with Umbran hunters. They're my discount xenomorphs. But I guess I'll allow it.
It's fucked up.
It's a little fucked up. So I wanted to get to my question, but we've already answered a fuckload of them, and I think I would be pushing it. I'm going to do one more real quick, and I'll hopefully get to my next episode. Rurum asks, on average, how many times is a Gene Tyrant rebooted? Do their noble titles list all their previous incarnations or just the most recent one?
Most recent one is what's listed on their like opening like character title.
All right, so on average, how many times is a Gene
I would say
Tyrant rebooted?
Apart from outliers like the Origin Strain, who of the two that remain, those two have never rebooted. Well, that remained. They're both dead.
Yeah, rip.
Usually, it's a safe bet is double digits.
Oh wow, fair enough. All right, well, we'll cut it off there for now. Thank you all for watching, and hey, maybe we'll even see you next time.
Bye.